Welcome to Energy GHK, living in biological harmony, where symptoms are explored as intelligent biological responses, not mistakes. Join us for grounded conversations on Germanic Healing Knowledge. Welcome and thank you for being here. Today I would like to talk about the third biological law because this is really the most important foundations for understanding Germanic healing knowledge as a whole. Once you begin to understand this law, everything makes sense. Why one person's symptoms show up in the intestines, why someone else experiences symptoms in the skin or the bones, the breast tissue or the lungs. From this perspective, we see that the body is not attacking us or betraying us. The symptoms follow a very specific biological pattern that's connected to the beginning, the embryonic tissue from which the organ developed. This is the heart of the third biological law, and in Germanic healing knowledge, this law is also known as the ontogenetic system of the tissues. In simple terms, it means that we understand the body according to the embryonic development. When the embryo is first forming, the tissues begin to differentiate into layers. These are called the germ layers. Germ, as in germination, the very beginning, the first unfolding of life. We have the endoderm, the inner layer. It's like the tube from the mouth to the anus. The mesoderm, the middle, which forms the structure, and the ectoderm, the outer layers, the skin that holds everything together. The mesoderm is further divided into two parts, the old mesoderm and the new mesoderm. And so in this work, we usually speak about four tissue groups: the endoderm, the old mesoderm, the new mesoderm, and the ectoderm. Each of these tissue groups is controlled from a specific area of the brain, and each one carries its own biological language, its own conflict themes, and its own tissue response. This is really where we begin to get compass understanding for how tissues function. Once you know what tissue you're looking at, you can begin to understand what kind of conflict it relates to, how the tissue behaves, and why the body is responding in the way that it is. Let's begin with the endoderm. The endoderm is considered the oldest tissue group in this model, controlled from the oldest primitive part of the brain brainstem. And to really understand it, it helps to think in a very simple, primal way. When we talk about this inner tube of the body, it helps to picture a primitive sea organism, something like the sea urchin in the ocean, carrying out the most basic functions of all life. At that level, the organism is not worried about its identity, its social status, its self-worth, or relationships. It's simply taking in nourishment, processing what is useful, absorbing what it needs, and then eliminating what it does not need. In other words, it breathes, it reproduces, and it survives. In many ways, that ancient design still lives within us. Inside every human being, there is still this primitive tube, beginning at the mouth and moving all the way through the digestive tract. Of course, in us it has become beautifully specialized and incredibly complex, but the basic function is still the same. It takes in the morsel, processes the morsel, absorbs what is valuable, and eliminates what is no longer needed. That is the world of the endoderm. These tissues are linked with the most primitive survival functions. They relate to nourishment, digestion, absorption, elimination, respiration, and reproduction. And in GHK, the endoderm is associated with what are called the morsel conflicts. A morsel can be literal food, but it can also be symbolic. It can be a house, your relationship, an inheritance, an opportunity, a job, money, or something you desperately want to get rid of. The emotional language here often sounds like this: I can't get the morsel. Maybe the job. I can't digest this situation. This is way too much to swallow. I need to hold on to this. I need to eliminate this foul thing, this situation. And these are the yellow group tissues, and they are said to proliferate during the conflict active phase. In other words, they build more tissue or increase function in order to better handle the morsel. When you're in a situation and you're conflict active, you can't get the morsel, you're trying to get the job. This is when the tissues begin to increase the function. And they may produce more juices, more mucus, more secretions, or more absorptive capacity, all in service of survival, of getting what you want. And when you see it this way, the body begins to make sense in such a beautiful way. Because if you put food in your hand, it's not going to nourish you. Your hand is not designed to digest it. But the moment you put the food in your mouth, everything changes. The saliva begins, the mucus is present, the digestive tube is ready, and the body knows exactly what kind of tissue is needed to take in, to break down, absorb what has the value. The upper digestive tract is more about getting the morsel in and beginning to break it down. The further down the tract we go, the more the theme becomes about eliminating what is indigestible or no longer wanted. This could also be an indigestible anger, something you don't want anymore. That is why the symbolism matters so much. A child may want the cookie and reject the broccoli. Someone may want the new house. Someone may feel they cannot digest a betrayal. Someone may want to get rid of a situation that feels ugly, foul, or impossible to process. The pancreas gives us a beautiful symbolic example of this morsel theme. Imagine a man who has worked for years in his family business, always believing that one day he would take it over. In his mind, it is his already. He has already pictured himself in that role. He's imagined the future. Psychologically, he has already digested that morsel. And then one day, he's told that the business is going to be given to his younger brother instead. The shock is not just disappointment. It is the loss of something he had already inwardly taken in as his own. From a GHK perspective, this can be understood as a pancreatic morsel conflict. The body responds as though it needs to better digest and process what was expected, but suddenly not received. The endoderm is ready for the survival, the nourishment, the digestion, and elimination. It is the ancient biology. It is the oldest language of the body. Let's move on to the old mesoderm. The old mesoderm is associated more with protection, attack, integrity, and the nest. These tissues include the dermis layer, the pleura, the peritoneum, pericardium, and the mammary glands. The emotional language here is different. It sounds more like, I was attacked. My integrity was violated. I was soiled or ridiculed. Wounded. I must protect my nest. There is danger to my child, my home, or my family if there are family disputes. One of the best known examples in this layer is the mother-child worry conflict linked to the mammary glands. In this perspective, if a mother experiences intense worry for her child, or for someone she experiences in a childlike role, the body is understood as responding biologically by preparing to provide more nourishment or support. Another example would be an attack conflict. Someone may receive a frightening diagnosis and suddenly feeling attacked in a specific area of the body. Or perhaps they undergo an invasive procedure and experience it as violating or wounding. In GHK, this could be interpreted as an attack conflict involving the protective tissues. We see this a lot in acne. And then there is the nest conflict, when a woman feels her home is no longer safe, or her family is under threat, or she cannot protect her children. That deep distress around the nest belongs to the old mesodermal language. These tissues, like the endodermal tissues, are said to proliferate during the conflict active phase and then break down or remodel in healing. Then we come to the new mesoderm. This is such an important layer because it covers the tissues of self-worth and self-devaluation. The new mesoderm includes the bones, the muscles, the tendons, the cartilage, the ligaments, connective tissue, lymphatic system, and similar support structures. These are all linked to self-devaluation conflicts. And here the language becomes very personal. It might sound like, I'm not good enough. I failed. I'm useless. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. I couldn't perform. I am devalued in this role. And what is so fascinating here is that the exact location matters. A person with shoulder pain may be experiencing a conflict around not being a good partner, a parent, or a support person. A person with knee issues may be in the conflict around performance, ambition, athletics, or not being able to move forward. A person with hand issues may feel clumsy, incapable, or that they did something wrong with their hands. A person with neck or cervical symptoms may be involved in an intellectual self-devaluation, feeling stupid, wrong, or mentally inadequate. Imagine a man who loses his job unexpectedly after always being the provider. He feels humiliated, like a failure, no longer strong enough to carry his family. That could be a self-devaluation conflict affecting the new mesoderm tissue. Or think of a student who studies hard, fails an important exam, and walks away thinking, I'm stupid, I can't do this. Or a mother who believes she has failed her child. That feeling lands in her body like a blow to her self-worth. These are themes of the new mesoderm. Unlike the endoderm and old mesoderm, these tissues are said to lose tissue or function during the conflict active phase, and then rebuild in the healing. And that is why swelling, inflammation, repair, and pain are often understood as part of the healing phase in these tissues. And finally, we come to the ectoderm layer. The ectoderm is associated more with advanced relational and territorial experiences. These tissues include the outer skin, certain mucosal linings, the structures associated with separation, communication, social contact, identity, and territory. The emotional language here often sounds like, I was separated. I lost contact. I don't belong. This is my territory. I cannot mark my space. And for a woman, it would be her inner feminine territory that feels violated. For a man, it would be his home, his work, his business, his woman. Or I cannot speak. I'm not heard. I fear losing my place. A classic ectodermal theme is the separation conflict. For example, a child is separated from the mother. Maybe he's told to go to school and he doesn't want to leave her. Or an adult who loses a partner, a child, a pet, or physical contact with someone deeply loved. The skin is often understood as the organ of separation because the skin is where we experience touch and contact. And so where contact is lost, the skin becomes symbolically meaningful. This is where we see rashes, psoriasis, eczema. Another ectodermal example is the territorial conflict. A person may feel their job, relationship, home, role, or place is being threatened. Or they may feel they have lost their voice or their emotional ground. There are also communication conflicts, someone who wanted to speak but could not, someone who felt silenced, not heard. These tissues are generally said to ulcerate or lose tissue during the conflict active phase, and then repair in the healing with inflammation, swelling, sensitivity, redness, or discharge, as we see in the skin with rashes and eczema. So when we step back and look at all 4 tissues groups together, a beautiful pattern begins to appear. The endoderm is about survival in the morsel. The old mesoderm is about protection, attack, the nest. The new mesoderm is about self-worth, performance, self-evaluation. And the ectoderm is about separation, territory, and social connection. And this is why the third biological law is so powerful within this framework, because it gives you a map. Dr. Hammer's scientific chart is color-coded for the germ layers. It's easy to find what germ layer is healing from the symptoms that you have, and it gives the examples specific to that. It'll tell what type of tissue it is, where that tissue came from embryologically, and what biological language belongs to that tissue. And as I said, it gives the example, the kind of conflict the person experienced when it all began. Once you understand these germ layers and the example of the conflict, you can go to your timeline and downgrade your own. The body no longer appears as though it is betraying you. It reveals a deeper biological logic, one that is ancient, purposeful, and deeply connected to how life is first formed. If this way of understanding the body is new to you, we have created courses to help make these laws much easier to understand in a grounded and practical way. You can visit us at www.energyghk.com, where we have an introductory course on the 5 biological laws, as well as our signature course, Living in Biological Harmony, on how conflicts so often arise within relationships, how they affect the body, and how to begin understanding and downgrading them. That is where the deeper work begins, not just learning the laws intellectually, but starting to recognize the conflict patterns playing out in daily life, especially through relationships. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope this helped make the third biological law of nature feel clearer, simpler, and more practical.